The morning light caught the copper strands of my hair as I twisted them into what I hoped was a professional bun, securing it with a pencil the way I'd done every day for the past 8 months. My reflection in the bathroom mirror showed the same Victoria Ellis I'd always been, pale skin dotted with freckles, green eyes that looked perpetually tired, and that mass of red hair I'd never quite learned to tame. Nothing special. Just another secretary trying to make rent in a city that ate people like me for breakfast. I smoothed down my navy blue pencil skirt and checked my watch. 7:15. If I left now, I'd make it to Moretti Holdings by 8, giving me exactly 15 minutes to start the coffee, organize Mr. Moretti's schedule, and prepare the conference room for his 9 o'clock meeting with the Castellano family. The same routine I'd followed since the day Vance Moretti had hired me, seemingly out of nowhere, after my interview at his downtown office. The subway ride downtown was the usual chaos of pressed bodies and stale air. I clutched my worn leather bag against my chest, mentally reviewing the day's tasks. Mr. Moretti had been particularly intense this week, his dark eyes following me around the office in a way that made my skin prickle with awareness. I told myself I was imagining it, that men like him, powerful, dangerous, absurdly handsome, didn't look at women like me with anything more than professional assessment. The elevator to the 40th floor always made my stomach drop, though whether from the speed of ascent or the anticipation of seeing him, I refused to examine too closely. The offices of Moretti Holdings occupied the entire top floor of the building, all sleek glass and dark wood, a testament to the empire Vance had built, or inherited, or taken. I'd learned not to ask too many questions about how exactly the Moretti family had acquired their wealth. Morning, Victoria. Marco, one of the security guards who always seemed to be around, nodded as I stepped off the elevator. His hand rested casually near his hip, where I knew he kept his gun. I'd stopped being startled by the armed security after the first week. Morning, Marco. I managed a smile, hurrying past him to my desk in the reception area outside Mr. Moretti's office. The space was immaculate, exactly as I'd left it yesterday evening. My computer hummed to life as I settled into my chair, the familiar leather creaking beneath me. I had just started reviewing Mr. Moretti's calendar when his office door opened. Vance Moretti stepped out, and as always, my breath caught. He was dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my yearly salary, tailored perfectly to his broad shoulders and lean frame. Dark hair slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. Sharp cheekbones and a jaw that could cut glass. But it was his eyes that always undid me. Dark, intense, the color of espresso, currently fixed on me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Victoria. His voice was low, smooth, with just the faintest trace of an Italian accent that became more pronounced when he was angry. You're early. I always arrive at 8, Mr. Moretti. I kept my tone professional, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. Something flickered in his eyes. So you do. He moved closer to my desk, and I caught his scent. Expensive cologne with notes of cedar and something darker, more dangerous. The Castellano meeting has been moved to 10. Antonio called this morning. Family matter. I quickly adjusted the calendar on my screen. Should I reschedule the 10:30 with the accountants? No. He was standing directly in front of my desk now, his hands in his pockets, looking down at me with that intensity that made me want to squirm. We'll run long with the Castellanos anyway. Move the accountants to Monday. Of course. My fingers flew over the keyboard, making the changes. Will you need anything else prepared for the Castellano meeting? Additional documents? Just you taking notes. He paused, and I felt the weight of his gaze. Wear your hair down. My hands stilled on the keyboard. I'm sorry? Your hair. He gestured vaguely toward my head. The pencil thing. Take it down. Heat flooded my cheeks. Mr. Moretti, I don't think... It's not a request, Victoria. His voice had dropped lower, taking on an edge I recognized. This was Vance Moretti, the boss, the man who commanded an empire with absolute authority. "You'll be representing my office in front of the Castellanos. Image matters." Humiliation warred with confusion as I reached up and pulled the pencil free, letting my hair tumble down around my shoulders in waves of copper and gold. I'd never worn it down at work, always keeping it restrained and professional. Vance's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. For a long moment, he just stared at me, and I had the strangest sensation that he'd stopped breathing entirely. "Better," he finally said, his voice rough. Then he turned on his heel and strode back into his office, closing the door with more force than necessary. I sat frozen at my desk, my hair loose around my face, completely bewildered by what had just happened. The morning passed in a blur of phone calls, emails, and preparations. The Castellano family arrived promptly at 10, an older man with silver in his dark hair, flanked by two younger men who looked like they could break someone in half without breaking a sweat. I ushered them into the conference room where Vance was waiting, then took my seat in the corner with my laptop, ready to take notes. The meeting was tense from the start. The Castellanos wanted a larger percentage of something called the North End territories, and Vance was having none of it. I typed furiously, trying to keep up with the rapid-fire exchange that occasionally lapsed into Italian too quick for my basic understanding. What I did understand was the way Vance's eyes kept flickering to me throughout the meeting. Every time I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, every time I shifted in my seat, every time one of the Castellanos' sons glanced in my direction, Vance's voice would take on a harder edge. By the time the meeting ended at noon, with an agreement reached but tensions still high, I felt wrung out. The Castellanos filed out, and Vance remained seated at the head of the conference table, his tie loosened, his expression dark. "Mr. Moretti?" I ventured. "Is there anything else you need?" "Lock the door." My pulse jumped. "Sir?" "Lock the door. Victoria." With trembling hands, I moved to the conference room door and turned the lock. When I turned back, Vance was standing, prowling toward me with that predatory grace I'd noticed, but never quite acknowledged. "Do you have any idea," he said, his voice dangerously soft, "what it does to me when you wear your hair down?" I pressed my back against the door. "Mr. Moretti, 8 months. He stopped just inches away, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. 8 months of watching you walk into this office every morning. 8 months of watching you bite your lip when you're concentrating. 8 months of you being completely oblivious to the fact that every man who sees you can't stop staring. That's not... I'm just... I couldn't form coherent words, not with him this close, not with his dark eyes boring into mine. "Just what?" His hand came up, fingers hovering near my face, but not quite touching. "Just a woman who doesn't realize she's beautiful? Just my secretary who has no idea that I stop breathing every time she walks past my desk?" My mind was reeling. This couldn't be real. Men like Vance Moretti didn't notice women like me. We existed in completely different worlds. "I hired you because you're efficient," he continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "because you're smart and organized and don't ask questions you shouldn't. But if I'm being honest, Victoria, I hired you because I took one look at that red hair and those green eyes and knew I was in danger." "Danger?" I managed to breathe out. "Of wanting something I shouldn't want. Of needing something I shouldn't need." His hand finally made contact, fingers barely grazing my cheek. "Of falling for someone who deserves better than a man like me." Before I could respond, before I could process any of what was happening, his phone buzzed loudly in his pocket. Vance cursed in Italian, stepping back and pulling out his phone. Whatever he saw on the screen made his expression harden. "We'll discuss this later," he said abruptly. "All business again. I have to handle something. Take the rest of the day. I'll see you Monday." And just like that, he was gone, leaving me trembling against the locked conference room door. My world tilted completely off its axis. I somehow made it through the rest of Friday and the weekend in a daze. By Saturday night, when my best friend Claudia called begging me to join her at Lux, the new club downtown, I was desperate for a distraction from thoughts of Vance Moretti and his impossible confession. Which is how I found myself standing in front of my closet at 9 p.m., staring at the red dress I'd bought on impulse months ago and never worn. It was tighter than anything I usually wore, the fabric clinging to curves I usually kept hidden under professional blazers and pencil skirts. The neckline dipped just low enough to be daring, and the hem hit mid-thigh, showing off legs I'd always considered too pale and freckled. But something about the events of Friday, about Vance's words, made me want to feel beautiful, to see if maybe, just maybe, there was truth in what he'd said. I left my hair down, the way he'd asked me to wear it. Claudia whistled when I met her outside the club. "Holy hell, Vic. Since when do you own a dress like that?" "Since never wearing it," I admitted, suddenly self-conscious. "Is it too much?" "It's perfect. Let's go turn some heads." The club was packed, bodies pressed together on the dance floor, music so loud I could feel it vibrating in my chest. Claudia pulled me toward the bar, ordering shots I didn't want but drank anyway, trying to quiet the voice in my head that said this was a mistake. I was just starting to relax, to lose myself in the music and the moment, when I felt it. Eyes on me. The same prickling awareness I felt in the office, but intensified 100-fold. I turned, scanning the crowd, and my heart stopped. Vance Moretti stood near the VIP section, surrounded by men I recognized from the office, Marco, Tony, others whose names I didn't know. But he wasn't looking at them. He was looking at me, and the expression on his face was something between fury and hunger. Our eyes locked across the crowded room, and even from this distance, I could see his jaw clench, his hands fist at his sides. Then he started moving toward me, cutting through the crowd like a shark through water, and I knew with absolute certainty that whatever happened next was going to change everything. He reached me in seconds, his hand closing around my wrist, not painfully, but firmly enough that I couldn't pull away even if I'd wanted to. His mouth was right next to my ear when he spoke, voice rough and barely controlled. "Where do you think you're going in that dress?" The heat of his hand around my wrist burned through me, but it was nothing compared to the fire in his dark eyes. The club's strobing lights cast shadows across Vance's face, making him look even more dangerous than usual. "I'm just here with a friend," I managed to say, hating how breathless I sounded. "Dancing. Having a drink. What normal people do on Saturday nights." His grip tightened fractionally. Normal people. The words came out like a curse. "You think you're normal people, Victoria? You think you can walk into a place like this wearing that dress and it means nothing?" "It's just a dress, Mr. Moretti." I tried to pull my wrist free, but he held firm. "Just a dress," he repeated, his free hand coming up to touch the red fabric at my hip, his fingers barely grazing the material. "Red. Do you know what red means, Victoria? Do you have any idea what you're advertising wearing this color into a club full of men who—" He bit off whatever he was going to say, his jaw working. "Who what?" I challenged, finding some spark of defiance despite the way my heart was hammering. "Men who might actually look at me. God forbid someone finds me attractive, right?" Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Every man in this room has been looking at you since you walked in, including—" His gaze flicked over my shoulder. "The one who's been watching you for the past 10 minutes and is currently making his way over here." I started to turn, but Vance's hand moved from my hip to the small of my back, pulling me flush against him. "Don't look. Just trust me." "Trust you?" The laugh that escaped me was slightly hysterical. "You've been acting insane since Friday, and now you show up here and dance with me." "What?" "Dance with me." His hand spread across my back, possessive and warm through the thin fabric. Or would you prefer I handle this the other way? Handle what? What are you talking about? But then I felt it. A presence behind me. Someone moving into my space. A hand reached out, touching my bare shoulder, and Vance's entire body went rigid against mine. Hey there, beautiful. The voice was rough, slurred with alcohol. Want to dance? Before I could respond, Vance had shifted, putting himself between me and the stranger. She's with me. Didn't ask you, did I? The man was big, broad-shouldered, with a mean glint in his eyes that made my stomach drop. Asked the lady. And I'm telling you, Vance's voice had gone deadly soft. She's with me. Walk away. The man laughed, reaching around Vance to grab my arm. Come on, Red. Ditch this uptight asshole and let me show you a good... What happened next was too fast to follow. 1 second the man's hand was on my arm. The next he was on his knees. Vance's hand twisted in his collar. Marco suddenly there with 2 other men I recognized from the office. You touched what's mine, Vance said, his voice calm, conversational even, which somehow made it more terrifying. Nobody touches what's mine and walks away unharmed. Vance. I grabbed his arm, suddenly afraid of what I was seeing. This wasn't my boss, the man who brought me coffee when I looked tired, who remembered I didn't like sugar in my tea. This was someone else. Someone dangerous. Please, just let him go. For a long moment, Vance didn't move. Then slowly, deliberately, he released the man's collar. Marco and his men grabbed the stranger by the arms, hauling him to his feet. Get him out of here, Vance ordered. Make sure he understands the consequences of touching things that don't belong to him. As they dragged the man away, Vance turned back to me, and I saw it. The flash of something wild and possessive in his eyes that should have terrified me, but instead sent a thrill down my spine. We need to talk, he said. Somewhere private. I came here with Claudia. Your friend is being taken care of. At my alarmed expression, he added, Antonio's keeping her company at the bar. She's safe. But you and I need to have a conversation that can't happen here. He was already guiding me through the crowd, his hand at my back, and I found myself following because what else could I do? We moved past the VIP section, through a door marked private, and up a flight of stairs to what looked like a manager's office. Or it would have, if not for the security monitors covering one wall, showing different angles of the club below. I stared at them, my mind trying to process what I was seeing. You own this place, I said slowly. Lux, you own it. Vance closed the door behind us, locking it. I own a lot of things, Victoria. This club, the building your apartment is in, the coffee shop where you stop every morning for your vanilla latte. Ice flooded my veins. What? He moved to stand before the monitors, his back to me. On one screen I could see Claudia at the bar, laughing with a handsome man who must be Antonio. On another, Marco and his men were escorting the stranger from before out the back entrance. 8 months ago, Vance said, his voice carefully controlled, I received intelligence that the Russo family was planning to expand into my territory. They wanted to hit me where it would hurt most, my operations, my people. I increased security, put my men on high alert. He turned to face me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. And then you walked into my office for that interview. My mind was reeling. I don't understand. You applied through a job listing that was supposed to be internal only, a mistake by my HR department that never should have happened. But you showed up in your neat little suit with your resume and your nervous smile, and I took one look at you and knew you were going to be a problem. A problem, I repeated, my voice hollow. A beautiful, innocent problem that had no idea what kind of world she was walking into. He took a step toward me. I should have sent you away. Should have had someone make up an excuse about the position being filled. But I didn't. I hired you. Told myself I could keep my distance, keep you separate from the business. But you couldn't. No. Another step. I couldn't. And within 2 weeks I had men following you, making sure you got home safely, making sure nobody bothered you on the subway, making sure you were protected every second of every day. The implications crashed over me. You've been having me followed for 8 months. Watching you, he corrected. Protecting you. There's a difference. Is there? My voice rose, anger finally breaking through the shock. You've been stalking me, Vance. Having your men watch my every move. Controlling where I live, where I work, where I broke off, a horrible realization dawning. The man tonight, the one who grabbed me. You set that up, didn't you? Something flickered in his eyes, guilt, maybe, or regret. You hired him to harass me so you could play the hero, I continued, my hands shaking with fury. So you could justify this obsessive. No. The word cracked like a whip. I didn't hire him, Victoria. But I knew he would be here. Knew he would approach you. How could you possibly? Because I received intel 2 hours ago that the Russo family had hired him to grab you tonight. To take you from this club and use you as leverage against me. He closed the distance between us in 2 strides, his hands coming up to frame my face. The only reason I came here, the only reason I had my men in position was because I found out you were a target. I stared up at him, trying to process his words. That's insane. Why would anyone target me? I'm nobody. Just your secretary. You stopped being just my secretary the moment I couldn't stop thinking about you. His thumbs stroked across my cheekbones, and despite everything, I felt myself leaning into his touch. The moment I made it obvious to anyone watching that you matter to me. And in my world, Victoria, the people who matter become targets. This is crazy, I whispered. All of this is crazy. I know. His forehead dropped to rest against mine. I know, and I'm sorry. I never wanted you involved in this. Never wanted you to know about any of it. But I am involved, because you made me involved by... I pulled back, suddenly cold. By what? Caring about me? Is that what this is? Yes. The simple answer, delivered without hesitation. That's exactly what this is. I'm in love with you, Victoria. Have been for months. And it's the most dangerous thing that's ever happened to either of us. Before I could respond, before I could begin to unpack what he'd just said, the door burst open. Marco stood there, his face grim. Boss, we have a problem. Isabella Castellano just walked into the VIP section. Every muscle in Vance's body tensed. Isabella. He said the name like a curse. Who's Isabella? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer from the way Vance's hands had dropped from my face. My fiancée, he said, his voice flat. Or she was, until I broke it off 3 months ago. She's Antonio Castellano's daughter. The room spun around me. Your fiancé, the Castellanos from the meeting yesterday. It was an arrangement between our families, a business merger disguised as a marriage. I called it off, but Isabella and her father haven't accepted that answer. He looked at Marco. Keep her away from Victoria. I don't care what you have to do. Too late, boss. Marco stepped aside, and a woman glided into the room. She was stunning, dark hair perfectly styled, wearing a white dress that probably cost more than my annual salary, every inch of her screaming money and power. But it was her eyes that made my blood run cold. Dark like Vance's, but filled with a calculating coldness that promised violence. Vance, darling, she said, her Italian accent thick and honeyed. Imagine my surprise when I heard you were at Lux tonight, and with company. Her gaze slid to me, assessing and dismissive in the same moment. Though I can't imagine why you'd be hiding away in an office with the help. Isabella. Vance's voice held a warning. This doesn't concern you. Doesn't it? She moved further into the room, and I noticed 2 men following her. Bodyguards, clearly, their hands resting near their waistbands. Because it seems to me that you've been keeping secrets, Vance. Important secrets. Like the little red-headed secretary you've been so obsessed with protecting. She knew. Somehow she knew everything. Get out, Isabella. This is my club, my business, my... Your what? She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Your woman? Is that what she is? She turned to me, and I saw the cruelty in her smile. Did he tell you about us, sweetheart? About how we were supposed to be married last month? About how our families have been connected for generations? I told you. That arrangement is over, Vance said, moving to put himself between us. Oh, Vance. Isabella's voice dripped with false pity. You really think it's that simple? You really think you can just walk away from the Castellano family? From me? She pulled out her phone, tapping the screen before holding it up. I saw myself on the display, walking into my apartment building, leaving for work, sitting at my desk, shopping at the grocery store. Days, maybe weeks' worth of surveillance photos. You're not the only one who knows how to have people followed, Isabella said sweetly. And unlike you, I don't have any qualms about hurting innocent bystanders to get what I want. The threat hung in the air between us, clear as crystal. Vance's hand moved to his waistband, where I suddenly realized he was carrying a gun. If you touch her, you'll what? Start a war between our families? Isabella tilted her head, considering. Maybe that's exactly what needs to happen. My father certainly thinks so. He's never forgiven you for the disrespect of breaking our engagement. The engagement your father forced on both of us, Vance shot back. I never wanted it, Isabella. You knew that from the beginning. What I knew, she said, her voice turning sharp as glass, was that you were supposed to be mine, that our union would strengthen both our families. And then this little nobody shows up and ruins everything. She took a step toward me, and Vance's gun was out, pointed at her chest in one fluid motion. Don't, he said, his voice dead calm. Don't take another step, Isabella. I've killed for less. The room went silent, except for the muffled bass from the club below. Isabella's bodyguards reached for their weapons, but Marco and 2 other men I hadn't noticed had already drawn theirs, creating a Mexican standoff in the small office. Well, Isabella said after a long moment, this is certainly dramatic. But think about what you're doing, Vance. Think about the consequences. You kill me. You start a war. You protect her. She nodded toward me. You make her an even bigger target. There's no winning scenario here. She was right, and I could see Vance knew it. His jaw was clenched so tight I thought it might break, his hand steady on the gun, but his eyes betrayed his internal calculation. So here's what's going to happen, Isabella continued, her confidence returning. You're going to put the gun down, your men are going to stand down, and we're all going to walk out of here like civilized people. But understand this, Vance. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. The question is how many people have to die before you accept reality. She turned to leave, pausing at the door to look back at me one more time. Enjoy him while you can, sweetheart. Women like you don't survive in our world. They either run away or end up buried in it. Then she was gone, her bodyguards following, and I realized I'd been holding my breath the entire time. Vance slowly lowered his gun, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. When he turned to me, I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes. Fear. I need to get you somewhere safe, he said. Tonight. Right now. Vance. No arguments, Victoria. Isabella made her intentions clear. You're not safe anymore. Not at your apartment, not at work, not anywhere except with me. You can't just kidnap me. I'm not kidnapping you. He moved toward me, his hands gentle despite the urgency in his voice. I'm saving your life. There's a difference. And as I looked into his eyes and saw the truth there, the genuine terror that something might happen to me, I realized I'd already lost any choice I might have had in this matter. I was in Vance Moretti's world now, whether I wanted to be or not, and there was no going back. 20 minutes later, I was in the back of Vance's car, a sleek black Mercedes with windows so dark I couldn't see out, trying to process what had just happened. Claudia had been handled with surprising gentleness by Antonio, who'd explained that I had a family emergency and needed to leave immediately. She'd bought it, probably because Antonio had the kind of smile that made women forget their own names. Vance sat beside me, his body rigid with tension, occasionally speaking in rapid Italian into his phone. Marco drove, with 2 other SUVs following behind us, forming what I was beginning to recognize as a security convoy. Where are we going? I asked for the 3rd time. Somewhere safe. The same answer he'd given me twice before. That's not an answer, Vance. He finally looked at me, and something in his expression softened. My estate, north of the city. It's the most secure location I have. Your estate. I laughed, though nothing about this was funny. Of course you have an estate. Why wouldn't you? You own half of Manhattan, apparently. 40%, he corrected, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. The Castellanos own another 30. The remaining 30% is split between smaller families. You're talking about the city like it's a commodity to be divided up. That's because it is. He reached over, his hand covering mine where it rested on the seat between us. In my world, everything is a commodity, Victoria. Territory, loyalty, power. The only thing that matters is who controls what. I pulled my hand away, suddenly angry. And me? What am I in this equation? Another thing you control? No. The word came out harsh, almost desperate. You're the one thing I can't control, and it's driving me insane. The confession hung between us as the car sped through the empty streets. It was past midnight now, the city a blur of lights outside the tinted windows. Tell me about Isabella, I said finally. The truth this time. Vance was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair in that gesture I'd come to recognize as his tell when he was stressed. Our fathers arranged the engagement when we were children. Isabella was 10, I was 13. It was supposed to unite our families, create an unbreakable alliance between the Morettis and the Castellanos. He stared at his hands. I went along with it because that's what you do in this world. You honor your father's agreements. You put family above everything else. But you didn't love her. I barely knew her. We'd see each other at family gatherings, exchange pleasantries. She was beautiful, connected, exactly what a man in my position should want. He finally looked at me. And then 8 months ago, I hired a secretary who made me forget every rule I'd ever learned about keeping business and pleasure separate. My heart was hammering. What happened? Between the interview and now? Everything and nothing. He shifted to face me more fully. You walked into my office and I knew immediately I was in trouble. You were so nervous, kept dropping your pen, apologizing for taking up my time. And I couldn't stop staring at your hair, the way it caught the light, the freckles across your nose, the way you bit your lip when you were thinking. I remembered that interview, how terrified I'd been, how certain I'd blown it completely. I called Isabella that same day, he continued. Told her the engagement was off. She didn't take it well, but I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong, because her father didn't accept it. Antonio Castellano doesn't accept anything that diminishes his power or his family's status. Breaking the engagement was an insult, one he's been planning to repay. Vance's jaw tightened. I underestimated how far he'd go, how far Isabella would go. The car slowed, turning off the main road onto a private drive. Through the windshield, I could see gates opening, revealing a long driveway lined with trees. "We're here," Marco announced from the front. The estate was massive, a sprawling stone mansion that looked like it belonged in the Italian countryside rather than upstate New York. Lights illuminated the grounds, revealing manicured gardens and what looked like a small lake in the distance. "This is where you live?" I breathed. "When I'm not at my apartment in the city." He was already out of the car, offering me his hand. "Come on. You must be exhausted." I was, but adrenaline was still coursing through my system, making sleep seem impossible. I let him help me out, my heels clicking on the stone driveway as we approached the entrance. A woman met us at the door, older, elegantly dressed, with sharp eyes that assessed me in a single glance. "Maria," Vance said, his tone gentler than I'd heard it all night. "This is Victoria. She'll be staying with us for a while. Please prepare the blue suite for her." "Of course, Mr. Moretti." Maria's English carried a thick Italian accent. She turned to me, and her expression softened marginally. "Miss Victoria, welcome to Casa Moretti. Are you hungry? I can prepare something." "I'm fine, thank you." My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too calm, considering the circumstances. "The blue suite has everything you'll need," Vance said, as Maria disappeared into the house. "Clothes, toiletries. Maria will bring you anything else you require. For now, though, I'd like to show you something." He led me through the house, and I tried not to gawk at the opulence surrounding me. Marble floors, priceless artwork, furniture that probably cost more than my entire apartment building. Everything screamed old money, old power, old blood. We ended up in what appeared to be a study: dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk positioned before windows that overlooked the grounds. But Vance moved past all of that to a panel in the wall, pressing his palm against it. A hidden door swung open, revealing a room beyond. "This," he said, gesturing for me to enter, "is the real heart of this house." I stepped inside and gasped. The room was filled with monitors, computers, communication equipment. Maps covered one wall, marked with colored pins and what looked like territories. It was a command center, a war room. "This is where I run my operations," Vance explained, closing the door behind us. "From here, I can see everything, control everything. Every club, every business, every person who works for me has a connection point here." He moved to one of the computers, tapping keys until a screen filled with surveillance footage. My apartment building, my office, the coffee shop I frequented. All of them, multiple camera angles, real-time feeds. "I told you I've been watching you," he said softly. "This is how. I should have been terrified. Should have run screaming from this man who had been monitoring my every move for months. But instead, I found myself moving closer to the screens, studying the familiar locations with new eyes." "The morning of your interview," Vance said, pulling up what appeared to be archived footage, "you stopped at a coffee cart on Fifth Avenue. Do you remember?" I did, vaguely. I'd been early, nervous, had needed something to calm my nerves. "The man behind the counter said something that made you laugh." Vance's voice had gone soft, almost reverent. "I watched you through the security camera across the street, and I knew in that moment that you were going to change everything. You were already watching me before the interview. I watch everyone who applies to work in my office. Security protocol." He turned to face me. "But with you, I couldn't look away. And after I hired you, after I saw you every day, it became an obsession. Knowing where you were, knowing you were safe, knowing that no one could hurt you without going through me first." "That's not protection, Vance," I said. though my voice lacked conviction. That's stalking. In my world, they're the same thing. He moved closer, and I could smell his cologne again, that intoxicating mix of cedar and danger. I can't apologize for keeping you safe, Victoria. I won't, even if it means you hate me. I don't hate you. The admission escaped before I could stop it. I should. God knows I should. But I don't. Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. Then what do you feel? I looked up at him, this dangerous, powerful man who had turned my world upside down in the span of a few hours. I don't know. Confused, scared, angry that you've been lying to me for months. I never lied. Omission is lying, Vance. You let me think I was safe, that my life was normal, when all along... You were never safe, he interrupted. That's what you need to understand. From the moment you walked into my office, you became a target. The only question was whether I could protect you before someone tried to use you against me. And now Isabella and her father know about you, which means every enemy I have knows about you, which means the only way to keep you alive is to keep you close. He cupped my face in his hands, his touch surprisingly gentle. I need you to trust me, Victoria. Just for tonight. Tomorrow we can figure out the rest. But tonight, I need you to trust that I will keep you safe. I wanted to argue. Wanted to demand he take me back to my apartment, my life, my freedom. But the truth was, I was terrified. Isabella's cold eyes, her threats, the casual way she'd implied my death. It was all too real. Okay, I whispered. Tonight. But tomorrow we talk about all of this. Everything. Everything, he agreed. And then he did something that took my breath away. He leaned down and pressed his lips to my forehead, the gesture so tender it made my chest ache. Thank you for trusting me. Maria appeared at the door of the study, clearing her throat discreetly. The blue suite is ready, Mr. Moretti. I'll take her up, Vance said, his hands dropping from my face. Thank you, Maria. The blue suite turned out to be a bedroom larger than my entire apartment, decorated in shades of cream and sapphire. A massive 4-poster bed dominated the space, and through an open door I could see a bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. There are clothes in the closet, Vance said, lingering in the doorway. My sister stays here sometimes. You're about the same size. If you need anything, press the button beside the bed. Maria or one of the staff will come. Your sister? I latched onto this detail, hungry for any information about his life beyond the crime and the danger. A genuine smile touched his lips. Sophia. She's away at university in Florence. You'd like her. She's stubborn, independent, refuses to accept help from anyone. Sounds familiar, I said, and he laughed softly. Yes, it does. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but instead he just nodded. Good night, Victoria. Try to sleep. You're safe here. After he left, I stood in the center of the enormous bedroom, still wearing the red dress that had started this entire nightmare. My phone buzzed in the small clutch I'd managed to hold on to all night. A text from Claudia. Hope everything's okay with your family. Call me tomorrow. I typed back a quick, will do. Then set the phone aside, guilt churning in my stomach. I was lying to my best friend, but what else could I do? Tell her I was being held at a mobster's estate for my own protection. I changed into the silk pajamas I found in the closet, exactly my size, which should have disturbed me more than it did, and climbed into the absurdly comfortable bed. Through the windows, I could see the grounds lit up like a fortress, guards patrolling in the distance. Somewhere in this house, Vance was probably still awake, monitoring his empire from that command center, watching over me like he'd been doing for months. And despite everything, the lies, the surveillance, the danger, I found myself thinking about the look in his eyes when he'd kissed my forehead. the genuine fear for my safety, the desperate need in his voice when he'd said he couldn't control how he felt about me. I was falling for a man who'd been obsessed with me since the day we met, a man who ran a criminal empire, a man who had just made me a target in a war between families I didn't even know existed. And God help me, I was starting to think I didn't want to run away. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I didn't recognize, momentarily disoriented by the softness of the sheets and the sheer size of the room around me. Then the memories crashed back. The club, Isabella's threats, Vance's confession, this gilded cage he called protection. A soft knock at the door made me sit up, pulling the silk covers to my chest. "Come in," I called, my voice rough with sleep. Maria entered carrying a tray laden with breakfast, fresh fruit, pastries that smelled like heaven, coffee in a delicate porcelain cup. She set it on the bedside table with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Moretti asked me to bring you breakfast," she said, her accent thick but her English clear. "He's in a meeting but would like to see you when you're ready. There's no rush." "Thank you, Maria." I paused as she turned to leave. "Can I ask you something?" She looked back, her expression carefully neutral. "Of course, Miss Victoria. How long have you worked for Vance?" Something softened in her weathered face. 23 years. Since he was a boy of 15 and his father brought me from Sicily to run this household. She studied me with those sharp eyes. "You want to know if he's a good man, yes?" The directness caught me off guard. Yes. I suppose I do." Maria moved back into the room, her voice dropping. "Mr. Vance is like his father was. Hard when he needs to be, ruthless with his enemies, but with family, with those he cares for." She shook her head. "He would burn the world down to keep them safe. His sister Sophia, she calls him every day from university. His mother, before she passed, he visited every Sunday without fail. Even when the business demanded his attention, even during the worst of the territorial wars." "Territorial wars?" I repeated faintly. "This world he lives in, it's not kind, Miss Victoria. It takes more than it gives. But Mr. Vance, he tries to be better than what the business demands. He tries to build something lasting." She moved toward the door again. "The question is whether you're strong enough for what being with him requires." After she left, I picked at the breakfast, my appetite wavering between non-existent and ravenous. The coffee was perfect, exactly how I took it, which meant Vance had been paying attention to details I hadn't even realized he'd noticed. I showered in the enormous bathroom, then explored the closet Maria had mentioned. It was full of clothes that fit me perfectly. Designer labels I'd only ever seen in magazines, shoes that probably cost more than my monthly rent, accessories that sparkled with what I suspected were real diamonds. Everything was in my size, my style, my colors. Vance hadn't just been watching me. He'd been studying me, learning me, preparing for this moment when he'd bring me into his world. I chose a simple cream sweater and dark jeans, refusing to wear anything too expensive or formal. This might be his world, but I wasn't ready to transform into someone who belonged in it. Marco was waiting in the hallway when I emerged. "Miss Ellis, Mr. Moretti asked me to bring you to his office when you were ready." "Is his meeting over?" "It is now." Something that might have been amusement flickered across Marco's usually stoic face. He's been checking his watch every 5 minutes for the past hour. Vance's office was on the main floor, a massive room with windows overlooking the grounds and that same air of controlled power that seemed to follow him everywhere. He stood when I entered, and I noticed the dark circles under his eyes, the rumpled state of his usually immaculate appearance. He hadn't slept. "Victoria." My name on his lips still did things to my insides I didn't want to examine. "How did you sleep?" "Better than you, apparently." I moved into the room, noting the multiple empty espresso cups on his desk. the scattered papers. Have you been up all night? Making arrangements. He gestured to one of the leather chairs facing his desk. Please, sit. We need to discuss your situation. My situation? I repeated as I sat, hating how the phrase reduced my entire life to a problem needing solving. You mean the part where I'm a prisoner in your mansion? You're not a prisoner. He came around the desk, leaning against it so he was closer to me. You're protected. There's a difference. Then I can leave? His jaw tightened. Not safely, no. So I'm a prisoner. I crossed my arms. Just a well-treated one. Vance was quiet for a moment, and I could see him choosing his words carefully. Last night, after I brought you here, I had my people dig deeper into the Castellanos' plans. What they found. He ran a hand through his hair. Isabella wasn't bluffing, Victoria. Her father has put a price on your head. The room tilted. What? Not to kill you, he added quickly, as if that made it better. To take you, to use you as leverage against me. Antonio wants his daughter's marriage back, and he's willing to start a war to get it. But I'm nobody to you. Just a secretary. You stopped being just a secretary months ago, and everyone in our world knows it. He crouched before my chair, bringing us eye to eye. They know I broke off an engagement for you. They know I've been protecting you, watching over you. They know you matter to me in a way no one has mattered before. And that makes me valuable. That makes you a target. His hands gripped the arms of my chair, caging me in without touching me. Which is why you need to stay here, where I can keep you safe, where my security can ensure nothing happens to you. For how long? My voice was barely a whisper. Days? Weeks? Forever? Until I can neutralize the threat. Until I can make Antonio understand that touching you means his death, and the death of everyone he cares about. The violence in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it sent a dark thrill through me that I absolutely did not want to analyze. And what am I supposed to do while you wage war over me? Sit in that beautiful room and wait? Something flickered in his eyes. I thought you could work. Work? He stood, moving back to his desk and picking up a folder. You're brilliant with organization, with managing chaos. I've watched you handle my schedule, my meetings, my entire office with an efficiency that puts my previous 5 assistants to shame. He held out the folder. I need someone to coordinate the legitimate side of my businesses. Someone I can trust absolutely. Someone who's already proven she can handle the pressure. I took the folder, flipping it open to find contracts, business proposals, financial reports. You want me to run your legitimate operations? I want you to have something to do besides worry, he corrected. I want you to feel useful, valued. I want you to understand that this isn't a prison. It's a partnership. A partnership I didn't agree to. No, he admitted, but one I'm hoping you'll accept anyway. I stared at the folder, my mind racing. He was offering me real work, real responsibility. A way to contribute rather than simply being protected. It was manipulative as hell, a gilded chain disguised as freedom. It was also exactly what I needed. I'll need access to the internet, I said, and a proper workspace, and I won't be involved in anything illegal. That's non-negotiable. Relief flooded his face. Done. There's an office next to mine that's been empty for months. It's yours. As for the illegal side of things, he moved closer again, and I caught that intoxicating scent of his cologne. You'll never be asked to touch anything that could put you at risk legally. I keep my world separate for a reason. Because you care about me, I said, the words somewhere between a question and a statement. Because I'm in love with you. He said it simply, directly, as if it were the most obvious fact in the world. And I have been since the moment you dropped that pen during your interview and apologized 3 times for wasting my time. My breath caught. He'd mentioned loving me last night, but hearing it again in the cold light of day, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, it hit differently. Vance? You don't have to say it back, he interrupted. I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking for time. Time to show you that this can work. That you can be safe and happy and free even in my world. Free, except I can't leave. For now, he agreed. But Victoria, I promise you, when this is over, when Antonio backs down and Isabella accepts reality, you'll have a choice. Stay with me or walk away. I'll let you go if that's what you want. Will you? I challenged. Because everything about the past 24 hours suggests you're not good at letting go of things you consider yours. A dangerous smile curved his lips. You're right, I'm not. Which is why I'm going to spend every day until then convincing you that you want to stay. Before I could respond, the door burst open. A young woman stormed in, petite, dark-haired, wearing designer clothes and an expression of absolute fury. Vance Alessandro Moretti, she snapped in heavily accented English. You have 3 seconds to explain why I had to learn from Marco that you've brought a woman to the estate before I... She stopped, seeing me for the first time. Her eyes widened. Oh, Sophia, Vance said, and I heard genuine affection in his voice despite his exasperated tone. You're supposed to be in Florence. And you're supposed to tell your sister when you're in danger from the Castellanos. She moved into the room, her anger shifting to concern as she looked him over. Marco said Antonio put a price on someone's head. He wouldn't tell me who, so I got on the first flight home. The price is on me, I said, finding my voice. I'm Victoria, your brother's secretary. Sophia's gaze snapped to me, and I saw her rapidly processing information. Then she smiled, brilliant and genuine. His secretary, is that what he's calling you? She crossed to me, extending her hand. I'm Sophia Moretti, Vance's vastly more reasonable younger sister, and you must be the woman who's had him checking his phone every 5 minutes for the past 8 months. I shook her hand, caught off guard by her directness. What? He thinks I don't notice, but I notice everything. She shot her brother a look. Every time you text him, every time you call, his whole face changes. It's disgusting, really. Sophia, Vance warned. What? It's true. She turned back to me, her expression growing serious. But if Antonio Castellano wants you dead or taken, you're in real danger. That man holds grudges like other people collect stamps. She's staying here, Vance said, under protection, until I can resolve this. Good. Sophia nodded approvingly. She can stay in my wing. We'll be roommates. I'll teach her to shoot, to recognize threats, to... Absolutely not. Why not? You said yourself she needs to understand this world. Better she learns from someone who isn't... She gestured at him, brooding and overprotective about it. Despite everything, I found myself smiling. There was something refreshing about Sophia's directness, her refusal to treat me like fragile porcelain. Actually, I said, I think that sounds like a good idea. If I'm going to be here for a while, I should probably know how to protect myself. Vance looked like he wanted to argue, but Sophia clapped her hands together triumphantly. See? She's smart. I like her already. She looped her arm through mine. Come on, Victoria. Let's go shopping in my closet. You can't face down the Castellanos wearing that. As she pulled me toward the door, I glanced back at Vance. He looked caught between amusement and concern, but there was something else in his eyes too. Hope. Thank you, he mouthed. I wasn't sure what he was thanking me for. Accepting the work, agreeing to stay, allowing Sophia to befriend me. Maybe all of it. Maybe just for not hating him yet. 2 weeks passed in a strange blur of normalcy and danger, luxury and confinement. Sophia became my unexpected ally, teaching me things I never imagined needing to know. How to recognize a tale, how to hold a gun properly, how to read the subtle power dynamics in a room full of dangerous men. Most people think it's about the obvious threats, she explained one afternoon as we sat on the terrace, the autumn sun warm on our faces, the guy with the gun, the one making threats. But the real danger is always the quiet one in the corner, watching, calculating. Like your brother, I observed. She laughed. Exactly like Vance, though these days he's less quiet and more obvious about what he wants. Her dark eyes fixed on me with an intensity that reminded me of her brother. He's different with you, you know. Softer. I find that hard to believe. It's true. Before you, he was all business all the time. Meetings, territories, making sure our family stayed on top. He never smiled, never joked, never checked his phone during dinner to see if someone had texted. She bumped my shoulder with hers. You changed him, Victoria, for the better. I wanted to protest, to say I hadn't changed anything, but the truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Vance sought me out constantly, joining me for breakfast, insisting we have lunch together in the garden, finding excuses to be in the office next to mine, where I'd been managing his legitimate businesses with surprising success. And there were the small moments, his hand at the small of my back when we walked through the house, the way his eyes tracked me across every room, the coffee that appeared on my desk exactly when I needed it, prepared exactly how I liked it, the cashmere throw that materialized on my chair after I'd mentioned being cold once. He was courting me, I realized. In his own intense, possessive way, Vance Moretti was trying to win my heart. The terrifying part was that it was working. He asked me to have dinner with him tonight, I admitted to Sophia. Not in the dining room with you and Maria and the guards. Just the two of us, in the garden pavilion. Sophia grinned. That's where he proposed to Isabella, you know. Before he met you and realized what a colossal mistake that engagement was. My stomach dropped. He proposed to her there, and now he's taking you there. Don't you see? He's trying to rewrite his past, replace a bad memory with something better. She squeezed my hand. Let him, Victoria. God knows he deserves something good in his life. That evening, I stood in front of the closet in my room. I'd stopped thinking of it as the blue suite and started thinking of it as mine, which should have alarmed me more than it did, trying to decide what to wear. The red dress from that night at the club hung there, professionally cleaned and returned. I pulled it out, running my fingers over the fabric. Where do you think you're going in that dress? His voice echoed in my memory, rough with jealousy and desire. I put the dress back and chose something else, a soft green dress that Sophia insisted brought out my eyes, with a flowing skirt that hit just above my knees. I left my hair down, the way he liked it. The garden pavilion was lit with hundreds of small lights, creating a canopy of stars overhead. A table had been set for two, with candles and wine and what smelled like Maria's incredible cooking. And there was Vance, standing beside the table in a dark shirt and slacks, looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen him. Victoria. He moved to greet me, and I caught the slight hitch in his breath when he saw me. You look beautiful. You clean up pretty well yourself. I let him lead me to the table, pull out my chair. This is quite the setup. I wanted to do something special, to thank you for... He paused, searching for words. For not running, for staying, even when you had every reason to leave. I'm not sure I had much choice in the matter. You always have a choice. He poured wine into my glass. I told you that. When this is over, when you're safe, you can walk away if that's what you want. And if I don't want to? The question escaped before I could stop it. Something fierce and possessive blazed in his eyes. Then you'll stay. With me. As mine. I'm not a possession, Vance. No. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. You're so much more than that. You're the only thing in this world I'm afraid of losing. The vulnerability in his admission made my chest tight. This man who commanded an empire, who made grown men shake with fear, was admitting that I held power over him. Tell me about your parents, I said, needing to shift the conversation before I did something foolish like lean across the table and kiss him. About your family before all this. His expression softened. My mother was from Tuscany. She met my father when he was visiting family there, and she followed him back to New York despite knowing what kind of life awaited her. He smiled at the memory. She used to say that love made people do insane things. I never understood what she meant until I met you. And your father? The softness disappeared, replaced by something harder. My father built this empire from nothing. He was ruthless, calculating, willing to do whatever it took to protect our family and expand our power. He taught me everything I know about this business. Do you miss him? Every day. Vance's grip on my hand tightened. He died 3 years ago. Heart attack during a meeting with the Russians. Sophia was devastated. She was his favorite, his little princess. I had to take over everything overnight, had to prove to all our allies and enemies that I was as strong as he was, as worthy of respect. And Isabella's father, Antonio? How did he fit into all this? Vance's expression darkened. Antonio and my father were partners of a sort, rivals who recognized that working together was more profitable than working against each other. The engagement to Isabella was my father's idea, his way of cementing that alliance. He announced it on his deathbed, made me promise to honor it. But you broke that promise. I broke it the day I realized I was falling in love with someone else. His thumb stroked across my knuckles. My father would have understood. He married for love, risked everything for my mother. He would have wanted that for me too. We ate Maria's incredible meal. Pasta in a sauce that tasted like heaven, fresh bread, a salad with ingredients I couldn't identify but desperately wanted more of. And we talked. About everything and nothing. About my childhood in Ohio. About his summers in Sicily. About my dreams of traveling the world. About his hope of someday leaving this life behind. You'd really walk away from all this? I asked, gesturing at the estate around us, the empire he controlled. For the right person. In a heartbeat. His eyes held mine. The question is whether that person would walk away with me. Before I could answer, before I could process what he was offering, his phone buzzed. Vance's expression changed instantly, all the warmth evaporating as he looked at the screen. What is it? I asked, fear creeping up my spine. Isabella. He stood, his entire body going rigid with tension. She's here, at the gates. As if on cue, Marco appeared at the edge of the pavilion, his face grim. Boss, Isabella Castellano is demanding entry. She has 6 men with her, all armed. She says she has information about her father's plans that you need to hear. It's a trap, I said immediately. Probably. Vance was already moving, pulling out his own gun from where he'd hidden it beneath his shirt. But if there's any chance she's telling the truth, I need to hear it. Victoria, go inside, now. I'm not leaving you. Victoria. No. I stood, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. You said I'm not a prisoner here. You said I have a choice. Well, I'm choosing to stay. Something flashed in his eyes. Fear, pride, frustration, love, all tangled together. If shooting starts, then I'll hide. I'm not stupid, Vance, but I'm also not leaving you to face her alone. Marco cleared his throat. Boss, she's getting impatient. Says she'll leave in 5 minutes if you don't see her. Vance looked torn, clearly wanting to argue, but time was running out. Fine. But you stay behind me, you do exactly what I say, and at the first sign of trouble, Marco gets you out of here. Understood? Understood. We moved toward the front of the estate, where Isabella waited beyond the gates. She looked different than she had at the club, less polished, more desperate. Her hair was pulled back severely, and there were dark circles under her eyes. Vance, she called through the wrought iron. Please, I need to talk to you. It's about my father. So talk, Vance said, his voice cold. From there. He's planning something big. I only just found out and She glanced at the men flanking her. I can't say it here. Too many ears. Then you should have come alone. You think my father would let me come alone? These are his men, Vance. They're here to make sure I deliver his message. Something in her tone, in the fear underlying her words, made me step forward. What message, Isabella? She looked at me then, and I saw genuine terror in her eyes. That if Vance doesn't return you to your apartment by tomorrow night, doesn't end this protection and walk away from you completely, my father is going to burn everything Vance loves to the ground. Starting with Sophia. The world stopped. Sophia. Sweet, fierce Sophia who'd become my friend, who taught me to shoot and laugh and see the humanity in this dangerous world. He wouldn't, Vance said, but I heard the uncertainty in his voice. He would. He will. Isabella gripped the gates. My father has gone insane with rage over the broken engagement, over the loss of face. He's already sent men to Florence. They're watching Sophia's university, waiting for the order. Vance pulled out his phone, dialing rapidly. Sophia, where are you? A pause. Don't leave your room. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but Marco's people. He listened. I know, just do it. Now. He ended the call, and I saw the calculation in his eyes, the impossible choice he was facing. Me or his sister. My safety or Sophia's life. There's another option, Isabella said quietly. One my father will accept. What option? I asked, though I already knew. Isabella's eyes met mine. You marry Vance, immediately, publicly. Make it clear that this isn't a passing fascination but a permanent bond. My father won't be able to touch you then. It would mean war with the entire Moretti family, not just Vance. And he'll have to accept that the engagement to me is truly over. That's insane, I breathed. That's our world, Isabella corrected. Marriage is the only protection that matters, the only statement that can't be undone. She looked at Vance. Unless you don't love her enough to tie yourself to her permanently? The challenge hung in the air between us. Vance's jaw was tight, his body coiled with tension. When he finally spoke, his voice was deadly calm. Get your father on the phone. Tell him I'll meet him tomorrow at noon, neutral ground. Tell him I have a proposal that will end this once and for all. Isabella nodded, already pulling out her phone. As she walked away to make the call, Vance turned to me, his hands framing my face. I won't force you into this, he said. Marriage. A real marriage, not a business arrangement. It has to be your choice. Some choice, I managed to say. Marry you or let Sophia die. It's more than that. His forehead touched mine. Marry me and you'll never be free of this world. You'll be a Moretti, a target. Someone who has to live with guards and security in constant danger. Or walk away now. Let me handle Antonio my way, and you can go back to your life. What about Sophia? I'll protect her. I'll pull her from university, bring her home, surround her with enough security that Antonio wouldn't dare touch her. But you're not sure it would work. His silence was answer enough. I thought about the past 2 weeks, about working alongside Vance, learning his business, seeing the way he treated his people with respect and fairness. About Sophia's friendship, Maria's kindness, the strange sense of belonging I'd found in this dangerous world. About the way my heart raced every time Vance walked into a room, the way I'd started checking my phone for his messages, the way I'd fallen asleep thinking about his smile. I was already in love with him. Had been, probably, since that night at the club when he'd looked at me in that red dress like I was the only woman in the world. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, I'll marry you. Tomorrow, in front of Antonio and everyone. I'll become Victoria Moretti and deal with whatever that means." The relief that flooded his face was almost painful to witness. "You're sure?" "No." I laughed, slightly hysterical. "I'm terrified. But I'm sure about one thing. I'm not walking away from you. Not now. Not ever." He kissed me then, and it was nothing like I'd imagined our first kiss would be. It was desperate and grateful and fierce, his hands tangling in my hair, my fingers gripping his shirt. It was a promise and a claim and a beginning all at once. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isabella was walking back toward the gates. "Tomorrow," she called. "Noon, St. Mary's Cathedral. My father will be there. Bring a priest. Bring witnesses. Make it legal and binding, and he'll back down." As she and her guards disappeared into the night, Vance pulled me close, his arms wrapped around me like he was afraid I might disappear. "Thank you," he murmured against my hair. "For choosing this. For choosing me." "I haven't chosen anything yet," I reminded him. "Tomorrow could still end in disaster." "It won't." His voice held absolute certainty. "Because I won't let anything happen to you. You're mine now, Victoria, and I protect what's mine." The morning of my wedding dawned cold and clear, the November sky a brilliant blue that seemed almost mocking in its cheerfulness. I stood before the mirror in my room, staring at the woman reflected back at me. The dress Sophia had produced overnight was simple but elegant. Ivory silk that skimmed my curves, long sleeves, a neckline that was modest, but somehow made me feel powerful rather than hidden. My hair was down, loose waves of copper that caught the morning light. Maria had insisted on doing my makeup, and the woman staring back at me looked like she belonged in Vance's world. Polished, confident, dangerous in her own quiet way. "You look like a queen," Sophia said from the doorway. She was wearing a deep burgundy dress, her dark hair swept up, looking every inch the Mafia princess she'd been born to be. "Are you ready for this?" "No," I admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." She moved into the room, taking my hands in hers. "Victoria, you don't have to. We can find another way to protect me, to deal with my father's threats. There is no other way." I squeezed her hands. "And besides, I'm not doing this just for you. I'm doing it for me too." "You love him." It wasn't a question. "I do. God help me, I do." I laughed softly. 2 weeks ago, I was a secretary worried about making rent. Now I'm marrying a man who terrifies half the city and somehow makes me feel safer than I've ever felt in my life. "That's what love is supposed to do," Sophia said. "Make you brave enough to be terrified." The drive to St. Mary's Cathedral was tense. Vance sat beside me in the back of the Mercedes, his hand gripping mine so tightly I thought my bones might break. He looked devastating in a charcoal suit, his hair perfectly styled, but I could see the tension in every line of his body. "If anything goes wrong," he started. "Nothing will go wrong," I interrupted. "We'll walk in, we'll get married in front of Antonio and everyone, and we'll walk out as husband and wife. Simple." "Nothing in my world is simple, Victoria. Then it's a good thing I'm a fast learner." The cathedral was magnificent, all soaring ceilings and stained glass that cast colored shadows across the stone floors. Antonio Castellano waited near the altar, flanked by a dozen of his men. Isabella stood beside him, her face carefully neutral. And around the perimeter of the cathedral, I saw Vance's people, Marco, Tony, others I'd come to recognize over the past 2 weeks. 2 armies, separated by a narrow aisle and the promise of a wedding that might bring peace or spark war. Father Benedetto, an elderly priest who'd clearly presided over more than one mob wedding, stood at the altar looking resigned. Vance led me down the aisle, his hand at the small of my back, and I felt every eye in the room tracking our progress. "Vance," Antonio called when we reached the front. His voice echoed in the cavernous space. "I see you've brought your little secretary. Does she understand what she's agreeing to?" "She understands perfectly," I said before Vance could respond. My voice rang out clear and strong, surprising even myself. "I'm Victoria Ellis, and I'm here to marry Vance Moretti. Is that going to be a problem, Mr. Castellano?" Something flickered in Antonio's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. A woman with a spine. How refreshing. He looked at Vance. "Very well. Let's get this over with." The ceremony was brief, perfunctory. Father Benedetto rushed through the traditional vows with the air of a man who wanted to be anywhere else. When it came time for Vance to slip the ring on my finger, a platinum band with a single diamond that must have cost a fortune, his hand was steady even though I could see the emotion in his eyes. "I, Vance Alessandro Moretti, take you, Victoria Rose Ellis, to be my wife, to have and to hold, to protect and cherish, for as long as we both shall live." The traditional words, but the way he said them made them sound like a vow of war, a promise that he would burn the world down before he let anyone hurt me. When it was my turn, I looked directly into his dark eyes and spoke from my heart. "I, Victoria Rose Ellis, take you, Vance Alessandro Moretti, to be my husband, to stand beside, to fight alongside, to love fiercely, for as long as we both shall live." I saw his breath catch, saw the flash of emotion he couldn't quite hide. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Father Benedetto said quickly. "You may kiss the bride." Vance pulled me close, his lips finding mine in a kiss that was possession and promise and everything in between. The cathedral erupted in applause, from his people, not Antonio's, and when we finally broke apart, I turned to face the assembled crowd as Victoria Moretti. "There," I said to Antonio. "It's done. She's mine now, protected by the full weight of the Moretti family. Touch her, and you declare war on all of us." Antonio's expression was unreadable. For a long moment, he simply stared at us. Then he nodded once, sharp and final. "The debt is paid. The insult is forgiven. Your marriage stands as a new alliance between our families." "There is no alliance," Vance said coldly. "There is only the understanding that Victoria is untouchable. Anything beyond that, we negotiate separately." Antonio's jaw tightened, but he nodded again. "As you wish. Isabella, come. We're done here." As they filed out, Isabella paused beside us. "Congratulations," she said, and there was genuine emotion in her voice. "I hope you know what you've signed up for, Victoria. Being a Moretti wife isn't easy." "Neither is being me," I replied. "I think I'll manage." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Yes, I think you will." After they left, Vance pulled me close again, his forehead resting against mine. "It's done. You're safe now. Sophia's safe. It's over." I wanted to believe him, wanted to think that a simple ceremony could really end the danger. But something in my gut told me this was just the beginning. 2 hours later, as we were driving back to the estate with Sophia and Marco, my instincts proved correct. The ambush came out of nowhere. 3 black SUVs blocking the road, men in tactical gear pouring out with automatic weapons. Marco cursed, throwing the car into reverse, but they were already behind us too. Trapped. "Get down!" Vance shouted, pushing me to the floor as bullets shattered the windows. I heard Sophia scream, heard Marco returning fire, heard the deafening crack of gunfire all around us. Vance was above me, shielding me with his body, and I felt him jerk once, twice, 3 times as bullets found their target. His weight collapsed on top of me, and when I touched his back, my hand came away red. "No," I breathed. "No, no, no. Vance." He was still conscious, barely, his face pale with shock. "Victoria," he managed. "Get out. Run. I'm not leaving you." I was screaming now, pulling at him, trying to see how badly he was hurt. 3 entry wounds in his back, blood soaking through his shirt. So much blood. Marco somehow got the car moving, ramming through one of the SUVs blocking our path. Vance's men appeared from somewhere, engaging the attackers in a firefight that turned the suburban street into a war zone. And through it all, I held Vance's hand, his blood soaking my ivory wedding dress, and made a promise. "You're not dying," I told him. "Do you hear me? You're not dying. And whoever did this, whoever ordered this, I'm going to destroy them. I'm going to burn their entire world to the ground." His lips quirked in what might have been a smile. "That's my girl." Then his eyes closed, and for one horrible moment I thought I'd lost him. The hospital was chaos. Doctors, nurses, operating rooms. 16 hours of surgery while I sat in a private waiting room, still wearing my blood-soaked wedding dress, my hands stained red, my mind spinning with rage and terror in equal measure. Sophia sat with me, both of us silent. Marco paced, his phone constantly ringing as he coordinated security, tracked down leads, tried to figure out who had ordered the hit. When the surgeon finally emerged, exhausted and grave, I stood on shaking legs. "He's alive," the doctor said, but it was close. Another few minutes and he would have bled out. The bullets missed his heart and lungs by centimeters. He's incredibly lucky. "Can I see him?" "He's in recovery, still unconscious but stable. You can sit with him." Vance looked small in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed. His face was pale, his powerful body diminished by trauma and blood loss. I sat beside him, taking his hand in mine, and felt something inside me shift and harden. The woman who had walked into that cathedral this morning, nervous, uncertain, still clinging to remnants of her old life, was gone. In her place was someone new, someone forged in blood and terror and absolute fury. When Vance's eyes finally opened 12 hours later, the first thing he saw was me sitting beside his bed. But I wasn't crying or praying or falling apart. I was making a list. Names of people who might have ordered the hit. Names of their associates, their businesses, their weaknesses. A blueprint for revenge. "Victoria?" His voice was rough, barely audible. I looked up, and whatever he saw in my face made his eyes widen slightly. "Welcome back," I said calmly. Marco traced the shooters. They were Russian, Bratva enforcers working for a man named Dmitry Volkov. Apparently he's been trying to move into your territory for months, and he saw our wedding as the perfect opportunity to take you out. "Victoria." "Dmitry has 3 legitimate businesses in the city," I continued, consulting my list. "A restaurant, a nightclub, and a car dealership. He also has 2 illegitimate operations, an underground gambling ring and a money laundering scheme through a chain of laundromats. His second in command is his cousin Alexei, who has a cocaine habit and a mistress he's hiding from his wife." "How do you know all this?" "Because I spent the last 16 hours learning everything I could about the man who tried to kill my husband." I leaned forward, and I saw him recognize that something fundamental had changed. "And now, I'm going to destroy him, piece by piece, until there's nothing left. A slow smile spread across Vance's pale face. That's my wife. 5 years later, I walked into the conference room wearing red. The color had become my signature, my armor, my declaration of power. The room fell silent as I entered, dozens of eyes tracking my movement. I'd learned to command a room the way Vance did, with quiet confidence and the unspoken promise of consequences for disrespect. I took my seat at the head of the table, beside my husband. Vance looked at me with that same fierce pride he'd shown the day I'd plotted Dmitry Volkov's downfall. Together, we'd systematically destroyed everyone who'd been involved in the ambush, rebuilt his empire stronger than ever, and created something new. A partnership where I was no longer just protected, but powerful in my own right. A new player, some ambitious idiot from Chicago trying to muscle into our territory, cleared his throat. With all due respect, Mr. Moretti, I'm here to negotiate with you. I'm not sure why your wife needs to be present for business discussions. The room went deathly quiet. Even the man's own associates looked nervous, recognizing the mistake he'd just made. Vance leaned back in his chair, a dangerous smile playing at his lips. Let me make something very clear, he said, his voice calm, almost pleasant. My wife isn't here at my side because I allow it. I'm here at her side because she allows it. Victoria Moretti runs half this empire, the half that's actually profitable. So when you question her authority, you're questioning mine. And that, my friend, is a very stupid thing to do. I reached over, placing my hand on Vance's arm, silencing him. I looked at the Chicago interloper, letting him see the woman I'd become. The one who'd learned to shoot, to negotiate, to recognize threats and eliminate them before they could cause harm. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice carrying absolute authority. You're going to accept the terms we've outlined, which are more than generous considering you've been skimming from our operations for the past 6 months. Or you're going to leave this room and never do business in our city again. Those are your only options. The man sputtered, clearly not used to being addressed this way by a woman. Mr. Moretti? She's not at my side, Vance interrupted, his smile turning predatory. I'm at hers. The sooner you understand that, the longer you'll survive in this business. As the man reluctantly agreed to our terms, I felt Vance's hand cover mine under the table, his thumb stroking across my wedding band. 5 years, and he still touched me like I might disappear. 5 years, and I still felt that electric thrill every time he looked at me. After the meeting, as we walked to our car, Vance pulled me close. Remember when you were just my secretary? When you thought you were nobody special? I laughed, the sound carrying echoes of the girl I'd been and the woman I'd become. That girl died the night you asked her where she thought she was going in that dress. No, he corrected, his lips finding mine in a kiss that still made my heart race after 5 years. That girl became a queen, my equal, my everything. As we drove back to the estate, the one I now ran with the same efficiency I'd once brought to his calendar, I thought about that terrified woman in the red dress, the one who'd had no idea how her life was about to change. I wouldn't go back to being her for anything in the world.